Good morning and welcome to today's T&D World web chat titled Future-Proofing Asset Management, Easing the Shift from Legacy Systems to Next-Generation Solutions, sponsored by MinMax Technologies. I'm Jeff Postlewaite, Managing Editor of T&D World with Endeavor Business Media. And to start with, I just wanted to let you know how you can participate today. We're so glad you're here. And if you have any technical difficulties during the session, you can just submit yours to the questions window and our experts will help you out. We also recommend that you turn off any pop-up blockers or extensions in your browser because these can cause some issues with the player. And we really do welcome your questions today. You can submit them just as soon as you think about them. You don't have to wait for the Q&A afterward. And we'll answer as many as we can. Please feel free to send them in the same way with the questions window and hitting submit at any points during this presentation. To refer a colleague, you can share it on social media or access event resources. Click the icons on the left side rail of your screen. And we are recording this and we will email you when it is ready to share. That usually takes about 24 hours. So just check your emails for that. And with that out of the way, I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have Einar Offerdahl, Principal Engineer for 60 Mountain. We have Joe Skelton, Director of Operations for Upper Cumberland EMC. And we have Steve Mouser, a consultant for MinMax Technologies.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate the introduction. We're going to have a good time today. I think we got some experts online that are really going to go a long way toward explaining the difficulties and the ease we have today in being able to move from legacy systems into the new digital asset management systems. I have a little anecdote. First is years ago, I had an opportunity to work with a software program that was absolutely excellent in the capabilities of being able to do planning and forecasting. But unfortunately, in order to make the thing work at all, you needed to feed it an immense amount of data. And the other problem was, unless you fed it all that data, it didn't work at all. So needless to say, the software wasn't all that successful because people just couldn't. They were frightened of it because it took so much work to get the data loaded and even then maintain it after that. So we're here today to discuss how that game has changed, particularly in the area of asset management. We're fortunate to have our two expert engineers with us today, two innovators who have recently upgraded to eSMART digital asset management systems from MinMax Technologies. They're going to share with us their experience in transitioning from the prior asset management and record systems that they had to a digital system of records. So I'd first like to introduce Joe Skelton. You see him on your screen up here in the upper right, nice big smile. Joe, tell us a little bit about what you're up to and what Upper Cumberland EMC is all about.
Upper Cumberland Electric is a co-op. We cover 4 counties in Middle Tennessee. We have 4,700 plus miles of line. We've got 13 substations and 55,000 meters. And we're a new MinMax customer. We're relatively new. We're just a few months in.
Very good. Thanks. Sounds like you're in Tennessee also, right? Cumberland, Tennessee?
Yes, Upper Cumberland Electric, and we're in Middle Tennessee. Our corporate office is in Carthage in Smith County. So we serve Smith and Overton and Putnam and Jackson counties.
Great. Einar, how about you? What are you up to these days, and what are you? How'd you get involved with eSMART?
Spring is here. I'm in the Pacific Northwest, Eastern Washington. We've got almost 100 public power utilities up here in the Northwest, co-ops, PUDs. Got a couple big investor-owned utilities. So just serving public power up here, and we had a co-op in Eastern Washington, not too dissimilar to Joe's, that had an existing tool that they were underutilizing and had some time and the wherewithal to find MinMax and try to put it to task. So I've been just recently helped them with a deployment.
Fantastic. Well, let's move on with our program. Joe, we'll start with you if you don't mind. Can you give us an idea, what were the drivers in wanting to move from paper to digital systems?
Well, originally we moved from paper to digital back in 2015, and the driver for that was accessibility. We wanted to be able to have our data that we were collecting instead of in a folder in a filing cabinet somewhere for people to find. We started doing Excel spreadsheets back in 2015, and now we would put that on a server where more people within our organization would have accessibility to it. But recently, we made the move from just merely digital to asset management, and the driver behind that was we wanted to put that data to work.
I understand. Very good. Heiner, you're a consultant for the company that implemented eSMART. What were their drivers? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, it was like we said, a cooperative in Eastern Oregon. They had an existing software-based asset management piece of software that was underutilized, as you kind of spoke to in your introduction. It was a little bit rigid, difficult to use, and it just kind of deprecated itself. So they were on the spreadsheet inspections, and when you're on spreadsheet, you amass a lot of data pretty quickly, and it's difficult to turn monthly spreadsheets that are coming in, and that could be 50 or 60, 70, 100 inspection sheets coming in, even for a small cooperative. It's hard to parse all that data into actionable data. And then being on spreadsheets, it's difficult to collaborate. This particular cooperative had a pretty wide service territory, 2 inspectors to cover that service territory. So on paper, on spreadsheet, so to speak, a little bit difficult to coordinate between the inspectors as things come up in their day. And so that was their drivers. They just kind of had an underutilized system that was a little rigid, and uh, and and so they were ready to take another run at that, and MinMax system ended up having a little more flexibility, so they could actually get off the ground and running with it.
Thank you. Joe, just out of curiosity, did any of the aforementioned drivers that Heiner mentioned, did you run into any of those in your company?
We didn't have a previous system like what he was saying, so basically it was just to move from that Excel format and just move just beyond storage to basically being able to do something with the data. But having that data there, I can relate to what Einar was saying in that even though it's in the Excel format, there's a lot of digging that's got to be done to find it, especially what you need. So being able to have that data to be working for you in the background instead of you trying to manipulate it is a big difference.
Okay. And of course, the next step in asset management is after you have all the data, is be able to actually do analysis on it, where in this Excel spreadsheet, it's not that easily done.
That's right.
So another question that people have are resistance or fears did you encounter within the organization? I mean, I mentioned one where people talk about having to, take this massive amount of data, which asset management can contain, and convert it into another system. But let's go with Einar first. Can you shed any light on any fears that the utility may have had?
I think this has become a well understood topic in the industry. Everybody, I think, has analyzed kind of are we cloud based? Are we site hosted? So I think has gotten a good grasp in recent years on their cybersecurity stance. So there wasn't concerns from the platform being cloud hosted. For that matter, you know, it's a demanding environment we're in. We're all running a little leaner, and so if that's something that could be securely managed by the vendor, that was a go for the for this cooperative. There really wasn't any resistance or fears to the implementation other than just concern about resources. Again, just running lean across the organization. I think it got to a pain point where it was going to be more painful not to corral the data than it would be to continue on the old spreadsheets. So it was probably just the right time to tackle the issue, and once you get the right time and you get that support, it's easy to push it through.
Understood. Thank you. Hey, Joe, how about you? Did you have any resistance within the company initially?
Uh, not much resistance. Of course, change. Anytime you're making a change, there's always a little bit of resistance there. There's always some fear there about taking on new software, new processes, and will those processes be more effective than what you already have. You get used to what you got, and then you worry about bringing on something new, and is it going to add a time and more layers to what we're already doing? But we found out quickly that when we swapped over to MinMax, one of the first projects that we did is made our substation inspections. And within a month or two, I was getting reports back from our substation technicians that the software actually sped up and made us more efficient out in the field. So that resistance was answered quickly. As far as fears, safeguarding our data, making our data continue to be our data. Well, you mentioned putting them in the cloud, but that data still belongs to Upper Cumberland. And it's always good practices to back your data up, which we can do and do that. There was a little bit of fear of being in the transition phase. So everyone in our organization was used to seeing these Excel sheets on our server or whatever, but we could actually still back up the reports and the things that we were doing and still be able to store them in the same place. We could back our eSMART software up in Excel form. So that provided us during the transition phase, the people that were not on to the software yet could still get that same data. And it sort of allowed us to live in both worlds until we get completely moved over.
That's a major issue, is when do I turn this one off and turn that one on? So you have a nice overlap there.
Yeah.
So if we move along, and Joel asked you another question, is then so how long did it take you, let's say, from the order being placed to actually being up and running and doing something productive?
Really immediately. I mean, that would be my answer to that, because of this data that we had in Excel, we provided MinMax, eSMART with some of our Excel forms and our inspections and some of our substation information. And they did a little pilot and a demo for us and give us web access to their training website, which allowed us to basically test drive this thing with some of our data right out of the beginning. So initially, right out of the gate, we got to sort of play around with the software and the training. And then after we made the purchase, we continued with that training. Our full transition took us about 3 months, and before we were ready to start doing our substation inspections in production.
Excellent. Heiner, how about you on implementation on your end?
Yeah, I can second that. I think full deployment was 3 months from stem to stern. We we were using the system within under a month, a couple of weeks once the contract was signed and the order was placed. MinMax stood up production and test databases really quickly. One of the benefits I felt, I've done a lot of system implementations on a lot of different software packages. One of the things I liked about eSMART was out of the box, it just was full of example data. And so we were able to learn by example. As with any new system, there's a little bit of a learning curve, and learning by example always seems to be the easiest. And I've worked with systems where there's just nothing out of the box, and you're kind of left reinventing the wheel from scratch. That wasn't the case here. So within, we were on the system playing around within a couple of weeks. We had a previewable deployment within 6 to 8 weeks, and then we had a dry run at the end of 2 months just to vet out the last of the bugs. And then the cooperative was doing their full round of inspections with the inspectors at month 3, and they'd already had one dry run. So, and I was pleased with the time frame. Everybody knows some of the if you can get an implementation done quickly before something else comes up that takes your resources, it's worth a lot. So I feel like we were able to get in, get it running, and get out. And under that, I think 3 months is that sweet spot. If something runs longer than that, you're running into those seasonal changes. You go from spring to summer, and pretty soon you're getting distracted with other tasks. So that's what we were seeing here.
We're no longer in the mode where we have to stuff data for a year and then everybody's lost enthusiasm by that time. They don't even know why you got that software anymore. Very good. So in summary, if you talk about the installation process of the eSMART package, basically, did you run into snags? Did you need to use any of the MinMax help desk, that sort of thing? Or I'm sorry, Joe, I'll toss it to you.
It was.
Okay. Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, I just got done talking, but I love to talk, so I'll talk some more. I am a biased and a hard to please customer. I have a software background as well as distribution substation engineering background. So I've written homebrew solutions. So everything. I'm a very hard customer to please. I have nothing but good things to say. The system is structured in the back end the way I would structure it as an engineer. So I feel like we were getting exactly what you would want if I could build something from scratch. So it was smooth. I mean, like we said, the production and test databases were stood up, populated with example data. There's some help prompts within the system that helped us get along. So, with a half an hour of training with staff, we were able to get running. You have some questions along the way. It exceeded my expectations. You usually approach these with a little bit of skepticism, a little bit of worry that once you get into the nitty gritty, that you can find some edge cases that you can't solve. But it just seems that every corner where we got to those, special unique cases, every utility's got special unique ways that they treat their data. And for every one of those special unique cases, we were worried we wouldn't be able to solve. We were. Um, the I think MinMax strikes the correct balance between administrative overhead, which is your office folks setting up the data, and usability, which is your field folks actually being able to make use out of it. It as you kind of kicked off this whole call, Steve, it allows us to. It's not rigid. So if all we wanted was a placeholder for some inspections to line up, you're running within a couple of days. If you want to track every photo, every serial number, you can go to and you can scale your own organization. So I mean, if you just want to get running out of the box, you can leave additional work down the road that just blends in. So it just seems like there's a lot of configurability and scalability there that it helped us kind of focus on getting the product usable out of the gate. And then, yeah, there's some stuff they'll be expanding on down the road, but there's no need to tackle that right now.
Excellent. Bill, how about you?
Yeah, I think Einar hit it on the head there. I feel the same way about that. I felt like I was glad to hear Einar say that 3 months is about normal, because I thought we were sort of behind the curve a little bit. But I felt like we slow rolled it, and we did that purposely because resources are, I mean, when you're in a co-op world, you ask fewer people to do more things, and it's on to the next thing usually. But I felt like we sort of slow rolled it. We first started with our substation import of our data there, and then we started with our substation inspections. And then we felt it was important, getting back to our drivers, of putting this data to work. We had this Excel spreadsheet information that went back to 2015. We thought it was important to get that imported into MinMax. And now we can run, as you mentioned, the dashboarding, the analytics, and put that data to work, basically. So that was important for us to do. And we too, like Einar said, we started out with the library that eSMART offered for substation inspections. There were a lot of questions and a lot of things that we didn't think of that other people had that we borrowed from, but yet we had the versatility to customize that and still fit our needs in special cases that we felt like we wanted to do. So it took a lot of the thought process out of it, and allowed us to build on what others had done and get everything set up like we wanted. So we felt like it was a slow rolled approach. And I will say this as well, and back up what Einar said, whether we go to the users conference or whether we go to the regional workshops that we've been to, we walk away every time saying, man, this thing is so powerful. There is so much more that we could and we should really be doing. But there's limited time, there's limited resources, but I don't think you got to do everything that MinMax can do for you to be able to take advantage of what you need and be able to have payoff for what you put into it. And all these other things that are down the road that Einar mentioned, we've got those charted out as well, but you don't have to have that full deployment, full implementation to take advantage.
Good to hear. Thank you. Well, that kind of summarizes the questions that we want to address specifically here and kind of prepare for. Are there any other questions, Jeff? I guess I'll hand it back to you and you can manage the Q&A session.
Certainly, yes. A few of you have already submitted questions, and so we'll just jump into that. And just as a reminder, if you'd like to submit a question of your own, just type it into the question window on the side of your screen and hit submit. It's not too late if you do, if a question occurs to you. Okay, so for the first one, we have what resources did MinMax make available to you to lay out your asset model description and nomenclature?
I'll start with that one. I think we sort of covered it a little bit with the libraries and the forms and things. So when we first started, MinMax, the software allows you to export an Excel worksheet that basically walks you through the process. And as Einar mentioned, it gives you examples. So again, you can look at how other people have done it, and you can look at how eSMART sort of suggests that it could be named. But then again, if you want to use your own customized things, you can do so. So that's sort of what we did. We looked at what eSMART had first, and then we kept some of their nomenclature, and then we felt like some of ours were specific to us and we wanted to keep, so we just sort of customized that and used some of ours and some of theirs. But the forms and the libraries and the templates that you can export, make your own, then import back in is relatively simple and quick. Einar?
Yep, I have nothing to add there. That was really our experience as well. It was great to just see examples. They have a model, naming structure. Just as an example, you could go any direction you want, and there's enough other fields and flexibility. I mean, you could go with their default. But yeah, we were definitely able to take all those examples you described, Joe, and apply it to the specific naming convention that the cooperative had. Because as we've said, everybody's got just a little bit of legacy labeling, naming, ways of navigating their assets from years past that they usually need to carry forward. And we didn't have any issues adapting the examples that MinMax provided to accomplish that.
Okay, I was wondering if someone could give us a sense of what level of experience was required to set up this system.
I could take that one. So I'm probably a power user, so I'm not a good example, but I worked hand in hand with junior staff at the cooperative that was fresh to asset management software and fresh to the industry. And as everybody knows, we just have a lot of specialized stuff that we do. So the learning curve was definitely there for the staff at the cooperative. So they seem to be using it right out of the box along with me as a power user. I didn't. So I would say very little, to be honest with you. If you have Excel, if you have the ability to, if you've got, if you're already using spreadsheets in your day, I think you've got the experience needed to navigate the system. I think with an hour of show and tell training, you will be in there using the system from day one. And so the long story short, I don't think you need a lot of experience to be up and running with the system in a short amount of time.
All right, and if you missed or needed to change data references or categories in the original setup, how easy was that to correct?
Well, I mentioned the training. So there's a training website that you have, and then there's production. So production would be your final. And I think this has been mentioned before, but what I like about the software is we can get in the sandbox in the training, and we can work in there and sort of implement what we want, and then once we think we've got it, then we turn it in and we contact the folks at MinMax and say, this is what we think we want. This is what we think we need to go with, and they'll check those things for us and sort of validate that before we move it over into production. So that helps a lot, that you can sort of play around with it and not worry about what you're doing to your final product. So that's a big help. And I will say, Anar was dead on the experience needed and just a little bit of an Excel, and that's sort of where we lie. But tech support to me is just as important as the product itself. And so to have good tech support is paramount. And we have found that with MinMax, and that allows us to be able to do what we need in the training part and not worry about breaking anything, and then let MinMax know that we're ready for that to go in production, and they can sort of look at us, make sure, validate what we've done, and then move it over into production for us or fix it then. So a lot of those things get caught on the front end, but even if it does make its way to production, again, you can go to that technical support, and those guys will clean things up for you and help you out very good.
I could second that, Joe. And I was in the nitty gritty, and we took a couple of, as with these implementations go, we took a couple false starts at equipment IDs or some of those database references, and I've worked with systems where you better get it right the first time because it's baked in, and that's not the case with MinMax. We went left on a few references and IDs just to see what it looked like. And once you see it, you immediately realize, okay, we don't like that, we're going to go right. And we made several pivots with the way naming conventions and things were related, and it was very simple. I would say 80% of the stuff we were able to do just again on Excel, find, replace. You can put it in the date. They have a pretty strong import export system where you can do quite a bit of work on your own, just with Excel spreadsheets. In a few cases, we painted ourselves in a corner, and we were able to go to MinMax, and pretty quickly they have a strong relational database in the background. They were able to go anything we couldn't do, that 80% on our end, they were able to get changed for us on there and pretty quick. So that exceeded my expectations for sure, being able to really be pretty willy-nilly with how the references and stuff were arranged, and then making some pretty big wholesale changes. Some of those changes you'd be done in 15, 20 minutes. I was surprised. So it was a benefit because we had some false starts. You're able to really play around with it and see how does that look. And I know we said that's what we wanted, but we just don't like that. And I think we ended up getting a really good product because we were able to just kind of keep playing around with the way things were organized.
Good. We have one here from a retired First Energy person. How did the implementation of the new MinMax asset management system add or subtract from the number of employees needed to monitor, manage, and act on the outputs of the new system?
Well, for us, it didn't cause us to have to add or subtract any employees. And what it did for us is actually made us more efficient. And like I mentioned before, in the co-op world, efficiency is key because we wear so many hats. So to be able to take what we were already doing and make our substation inspections, for instance, more efficient, that just frees up the time that each of these employees have. And the ease of use that Einar spoke about sort of caters to the fact that you don't have to have an additional employee to sort of manage the software. So that sort of, I think Einar covered that well. So it's all of these different benefits that you're getting from this. And then also I'll go back to what I said was our driver is putting this data to work for you. That data working in the background is generating work orders. So when you're doing inspections out in the field, you set up your own criteria for how you expect that data to be brought back in. So anything that may be entered in error or in unpermissible limits is flagged in the field. So that helps validate things right then. So when you're seeing that in the field, you double check what you're doing. And then when you happen to be looking at these reports back at the office, it draws attention to these things to make sure that, so you're validating things out in the field. You're speeding up your processes. You're streamlining your processes. Your data is working for you in the background. And when you need to interrogate that data, you're just a click of a button away from that. So all these things fit together to where you're really not having to add any employees, and you're not taking away. You're actually making yourselves more efficient.
I could second that. The driver wasn't necessarily the driver wasn't to free up resources. It's kind of like a different way of stating it. The driver was wanting to keep that focus on monitoring. I think this cooperative had about just under 1,000, pretty expensive assets to monitor month by month, and they really just needed to get the focus back on those assets, collect that actionable intelligence, just like Joe said, generate the work orders, just know what your bucket of work is to keep those, to maximize the life of those assets. So I think the team looked at it more like, and it's, really more of probably a maintenance investment in a pretty expensive fleet of capital assets. And able to accomplish all that without adding any FTEs, or really without, I think, adding any if any little if any burden to existing staff to get that going. So it was, yeah, so there really no, I don't think went up or down with the resources, but definitely able to re-kick off that maintenance focus on managing the fleet.
Okay, and we have some implementation type of questions coming in, more of them. How long did it take you from order placement to first use?
I know. I think I took that one the first time. Yeah, I think we.
I did, yeah, yep, yeah. I think
Yeah.
we probably covered that one, but yeah, we were in the system in under a month playing around, and yeah, I think we were dry running in about 2 months, with inspectors on mobile devices, and worked out the last of the kinks. And then after, yeah, at 3 months, we were full production.
Okay, and what were the drivers in moving from paper to digital?
Yeah.
Jeff, I think you may have jumped into a wrong set of questions there. Those are the
Yeah.
original questions we used.
Right, okay. All right, well, was there anything else that you wanted people to understand about just sort of the pros and cons there, or, you know, the any unexpected obstacles that were run into during the implementation phase?
No, I'll just say in closing that I think whether you're in Einar's world of consulting and you're giving somebody a turnkey product with MinMax, or whether you're in a co-op world like ours and you're more of a slow road, methodical, step-by-step process, I think the software would be would fit either situation. And I think resources that you need to get it up and going, and what you need out of the software, I think whether it's a full-blown approach or whether it's a methodical step-by-step, I think you'll find that you'll quickly get payoff.
I think that's well said, Joe.
Thank you, sir. All right, good. Well, I believe that is all of the time that we have at this for this session. If we didn't have any time to answer any questions, we will be getting back to you via email. But that is it for us. So, on behalf of T&D World, I wanted to thank Einar, Joe, and Steve for today's web chat, and I want to thank MinMax Technology for sponsoring today's event, and of course, all of you for joining. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.